Welcome to AI've Got Questions, the podcast for marketers trying to keep up with AI without getting overwhelmed. I'm Stacey Epstein, a longtime CMO who's spent enough time in the trenches to know it's not that people aren't using AI, it's that everyone's busy. The landscape is changing fast, and it's hard to know what's actually worth your time. Each week, we cut through the noise to uncover the tools, the tech, and the real-world use cases that matter, because the future's moving fast, and we've all got questions. Today, I'm really excited to have with me Philippe from GetWhys. And I was introduced to Philippe recently from an investor. Seems like there's some nice interest, potential interest in GetWhys, but you're still, I know, pretty early, which is totally fine. A lot of companies are early today, but looking forward to having our listeners and watchers get to know you. So let's just start with you. Would love to hear about you, your story. How did you get this idea? And then we can dive into what you're building.
Thanks, Stacey. And I have a fairly non-traditional story, I think, for like most startups and startup founders. So I've always been very curious about people, and GetWhys is fundamentally just about people. I grew up actually in the Middle East, so I'm half Lebanese, half American. I grew up going like I went to a French school. I spent most of my time there. In the summers, I'd come to the States for college. So when I was a marketing consultant, I would always joke saying your marketer's first English class was actually in college, and it would get little fear in the eyes of the client. But I was just always curious about how people thought because I never quite was like everybody where I was around. So I moved to the States for college, which is where I met my co-founders. I chose to study philosophy in the picture. It's like the fall of 2010. And the economy's a disaster, and the I think the hubris that led me to think like I should study philosophy at that point in time instead of like an engineering degree is probably a little similar to starting a startup. But I basically majored in thinking and how people thought. Right after college, I went and joined a market research firm. I was the fifth employee there. And we were hyper specialized. We only did B2B technology. And the reason why that matters in market research is B2B tech is notoriously difficult to find the right people and ask them the right questions. The CMOs of banks are not regularly taking 45-minute surveys like they would in the consumer world. So you have to spend a lot of time talking to people, predominantly in-depth interviews. And you'll see as we started talking a bit about the startup that we have, GetWhys, essentially we're doing the exact same thing we did as consultants, except selling it as a software product.
So you were, in your first job out of college, you were calling and doing market research.
Yeah, my first project was for Dell EMC, actually. I talked to 10 CIOs from the 20 largest US banks, asking how they thought about, at the time, backburner recovery, because not everything was in the cloud back then. Backburner recovery was a big space. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And kind of an interesting connection to your major, which isn't maybe very obvious, but you're kind of trying to get inside their heads and understand how they think and what makes them buy, what makes them
Yeah,
compelled to do
there's
something.
there's a heuristic in market research, the 5 whys technique. I'm sure you're familiar with it. The company's called GetWhys, and the whole thing is getting to root decision making. What actually leads to people making certain decisions? Because as a marketer, you want to know that so you can know what to say to them and at what point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I as a former marketer for many decades, I would say one of my strengths was always that I was also very curious about how people think. And I always called it empathy. People think of empathy as something different, but to me, empathy is the ability to put yourself in your buyer's shoes and really know how they think. Because if you
Mhm.
can understand that, if I can understand, hey, like, somebody is going to really be wowed by this particular feature because I know their pain point, then that's what I want to put forward as a marketer. And I think we just think of research as like, oh, it's just step A. But if you really think about why you do research, it's to get to the why. Why would they want to buy this? Am I solving a pain? Am I creating an opportunity? And if I know that, then all of my messaging and positioning should be around that. All of my campaign, this understanding of the customer to me is the cornerstone of great marketing.
100%. And I think in this moment now where the cost of content generation is basically free, I think buyers are assaulted by people trying to get their attention. The bar has never been higher to say something that's actually going to hit someone in a real spot and not just seem like yet another generic, save time, save money,
Yeah.
reduce risk. Yeah.
Yep. Totally. Okay,
Yeah.
so you did probably far too many calls than you wanted to do, but it led
Oh,
you to
many.
think, wow, there must be a better way, or did AI come along? I mean, AI has been around certainly that long, but what was your aha moment of like,
Yeah.
I can build something that's going to solve a big problem here?
I was laid off, and I can explain.
Okay,
I'll share a
well,
little bit of detail.
that
Yeah.
could cause some
Again,
thinking.
not the most traditional. So I ended up being a consultant for a little over 8 years, market research consulting, and I worked for everybody. I did like the last focus groups I did were for Splunk in person in Denver. I did competitive intelligence for each of the big three cloud providers on each other. I would help tiny startups figure out messaging and help really large product teams figure out like exactly how many I forget if it's like sharding a database, but how SHARD, we're not doing swear words on this podcast, but how many shards a database node needed to have to keep expanding. And I did all this work and thought, I am really enjoying getting to learn about all these spaces in tech. I never thought that this would be where my path would take me, but I just want to focus and work on one thing in particular. So I went over to a company called Transform Data. I was their first product marketer, which ended up being the ICP that we work with now the most closely. And just a few months after joining, we were acquired by DBT Labs. And I thought, wow, this is a great moment to think about what I want to do with my life. Do I want to join another startup as the first marketer? And when candidly, I was way over my head from a marketing perspective, or should I look at this amazing technology out there, the large language model, and just look fundamentally what it's doing. So we had this theory, and it's proving out to be accurate. I personally don't know if AI generated art is beautiful. I'm not a poetry expert. I can't tell you if it writes great poems. I'm not even that, like, I have a guitar right next to me, but I can't even tell you if AI generated music is that good. But what I can tell you that AI is really good at is reading large amounts of text. And I knew what the most valuable text in the world is. It's in-depth interviews with B2B decision makers because I'd spent a bunch of time gathering them for people. So we thought, what if we built up a data set and continued building a data set of those interviews and basically sold access to it via a large language model, flipping like the traditional research model where you pay first, gather data later. And I can expand on that a little bit if you want, but
Yeah, I mean,
that's what started things.
expand on it. So, yeah, let's just dive in. So tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's fundamentally two innovations to what we're doing as a company. Yeah, and there are a lot of really interesting AI and market research startups out there. There's companies that are gathering large amounts of data on the fly, using AI to moderate interviews, using AI to analyze them. We use artificial intelligence to do a lot of those things, with the exception of human to human interviews. We have an army of human moderators doing that every single day. But I think the two interesting things we do differently are one, changing the business model of research, which is something you can only do, I think, as a venture-backed startup. And then two, changing the way that research is delivered to people. So first things first, market research has historically had a project-based model. You say, I need to learn XYZ thing. You pay an organization, whether it's a consulting firm or one of the newer software providers, to go find the relevant people. They go gather that data and come back to you in a certain time frame. AI accelerates that. That's not what we do. We tell people you pay a flat fee for unlimited research, and you can access the database we've already collected. And if we don't have information that you want, you just click a button and say, tell me more about this. And our real human beings go find the relevant people and add that to the data set at no extra cost. So there's a business model flip. The second thing that we're doing that I think on a longer time horizon is much more interesting, though we're just in the early days of it. You mentioned earlier the point of research isn't to do research, it's what you do with it. And I can't tell you how many tabs my customers have open at all times. It's honestly kind of hilarious. Like you see a screen share and it's just icon after icon.
Totally.
The content of every Google Doc or slide or spreadsheet could be improved with customer insights, at least if you're a product marketer or someone else in a customer centric role. So I think the second innovation, the thing we're trying to pursue, is bringing the research to the work they're doing instead of just trying to do research for research's sake. That's part of why, while we have some customers who are on research teams at companies like Verizon, for example, their research team uses our product. The vast majority of our customers tend to be product marketers or other types of marketing roles where they're using this to go inform their next action.
So I'm a product marketer. Let's say I have a new launch coming up. I'm working on my main value prop, some positioning, some messaging. I want to get at the heart of what I am going to put into this positioning. I'm assuming can I just go query it like I would ChatGPT, just ask it a bunch of questions like I'm talking to 100 of my customers right now?
Exactly. And the biggest difference with us versus a chat GPT, every single thing we say can be tied back to something a real human being said. And we
Right.
show you the citations in line.
Yeah,
So you can
perfect.
trust that when you're going to your sales team, you can prove that what you're telling them to tell in the field is true.
Great.
Every
Perfect.
claim is backed up. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. I can imagine a product marketer going and presenting the campaign to the head of sales and the head of sales saying, that's not good. I don't like it. And the product marketer saying, well, I don't care if you like it because 500 potential customers like it. It's like the ultimate, like you said, you don't know if music's good or not, but if you can validate it with the people that are actually listening and they all say it's great, then you know it's great. So finally, we have a way of actually being able to judge our own work. But now tell me a little bit more about the second use case. I'm the product marketer. How am I using your second use case?
Yeah, so sorry, my dog barked for a second,
It's
so
okay.
we'll
I
we'll
didn't hear it.
pretend like we'll pretend like this is super smooth. Yeah, we view GetWhys as when we look at how our users are using our products, and we have two products right now. We have a product called Compass, which is sort of a Swiss Army knife. It can do a ton of different things, and a different product called Echo that does one thing and one thing only, messaging refinement.
Mm,
When we look at how people are using our products, it really falls into researching, creating, and validating. So if you're a product marketer and you're thinking, I need to launch a product in this new category, like let's say Salesforce is moving into, actually, Salesforce is in every category. So that's like the worst possible example. Let's say MongoDB is trying to launch a database offering that's for government defense. They probably would want to start by researching and seeing who the competitors are in that space. So probably AWS GovCloud. I assume Microsoft is all the way deep in there. Palantir might have something. They'd build up that research set, competitively understanding buyer pain points, things like that. Think about their own product positioning, put something together. That new document would become something that they would go validate in the product. They'd throw it in and say, here's how we are thinking of ourselves. What's the landscape going to say back? And we would go find specific things from people saying, this is going to resonate because we know that AWS has horrible integrations with the rest of blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Once you feel confident in the world you're going after on the research side, and you feel like you have validated your approach, you then move into content creation. You move into building those web pages, the collateral for sales, the ads, all that. And every single thing, once again, that our product suggests you isn't just coming out of the ether of the large language models training data, or even for some of our more advanced customers have deployed AI internally. They're looking at their own data. They're slurping out what sales is hearing, what success is hearing, what's in their own documents. Even those customers benefit from knowing what's being said outside of their walls. Because if you're in a growth role, ultimately all you can do right now is look at what you are hearing in the world that you're touching, but you are not exposed to the conversations that you're not allowed into. And that's something we shed a light on. So, yeah, it's a
got it.
huge difference.
So what happens though when you start getting big and everybody in the space is all using GetWhys? How am I getting my own unique competitive advantage if everybody's on the same system?
Really good question. So luckily, like we're not the first people to think, what if you build a really large database of insights? There's companies like Tegus that have made this a well-trodden path ahead of us. I think ultimately you as a company, your strategy doesn't come out of the data. Your strategy comes out of what you do with the data. So we don't expose all of the transcripts and all the data for everybody to see the whole time. You have to ask your own questions. You have to engage with it in your own way and bring to it your point of view. I think this is where like the philosophy part of me is going to make this the most boring part of the podcast probably, but you could have however many artists look at the same landscape. They're not going to draw the same painting. They're each going to have their own value to it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I was just helping my daughter was applying to an internship and we were talking about whether or not it would be appropriate to use ChatGPT and I was like, well, if you're telling it the points you want it to make and then it refines them for you, great. If you're just asking for it to give you an answer, the answer is not going to be you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all
I
worth.
mean, you read that Spotify memo. Like I think
Yeah.
you have to, if anything, it's a good thing for her to go use it. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of, I mean, my daughter's in 10th grade, right? So there's this like fine line of do we just give them free rein and let them do everything?
Hmm.
And I think, again, it's going to be more about how do you learn how to combine your own intelligence, creativity, work ethic into using it as a helper to make you better. And I know you and I have met before. My big focus in my advisory is on messaging, positioning, and that core value
Mhm.
proposition. I still use it all the time because it just gives me
As you should.
ideas. It's a brainstorm partner. If I have access to actual customers who are, normally my process is I need to talk to the head of sales, but I also really need to talk to at least 5 customers. And if I get that,
Mhm.
that's how I build my messaging and positioning. But if I can get the reaction of 100 or all of
Mhm.
them without even having to take their time, I'm using that every single day.
100%. I think everybody is leveled up by just getting better, faster access to customer insights. I should add, like our customers, we're lucky to work with some of the best people in the industry particularly in product marketing. We have some really fantastic people. They're making this a complementary part of their process. I think we have like I'm excited that people feel like they can't live without it. We see people spending 2+ hours per day in our tools now, which feels great. But they're still talking to customers. They're still doing some expert network interviews. There's really good providers out there, and I view us as sort of like raising the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great. All right. Well, really good, thorough understanding of what you do. It seems great. I want to recommend it to my clients. But I want one last question. I mean, we are so early in all the transformation that's coming because of Gen AI, AI in general. Do you have any visionary projections? Do anything long term that you're excited to do with your company? Just
Yeah,
general future thoughts.
a couple things. One of the things you learn as a consultant is that you can't fake delivering actual value to people. You can be as pleasant to work with as possible and build really beautiful decks, but at the end of the day, you have to actually deliver something to someone. We're asked quite a bit, like, what is the long-term exit? So we're a seed stage startup. There's 8 of us full time. We have a few dozen interviewers, but there's 8 of us full time. And we're really lucky to work with like companies like DocuSign and Docker and Commvault and also like small organizations too. But we
That's
have we
great.
have outstanding logos. We're coming up on our first year-long renewals with them. Really exciting stuff. My co-founders and I don't like sit and lay back and like aspire to be on a yacht or have a boat or something. We don't I don't even know that I like while I view what we're doing with connecting our data and what's on the internet and what's within a company's walls, as we started building these connections, while I view that as really exciting, at the end of the day, I think like success for us is our marketers bringing our insights into their own tabs. Is the first reflex somebody has to think, I wonder what GetWhys would say about this. I wonder what my customers would say about this. I think that's success.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Bringing it into the actual flow of work instead of seeking it out.
Yeah. I think if I can just add one more thing. There's a lot of like dystopian AI perspectives out there, and there's a lot like AI doomers and stuff like that. And I'm just very excited to be working on a product that connects people to people. We're using AI to do the hard part, which is just reading transcripts. And Tyler, one of my two co-founders, and I spent way too many years reading transcripts, and we don't have to do that anymore. So I'm happy to have a disruptive technology that connects people to people.
Yeah, I'm 100% in your boat, and we agree. I'm all about people and how people think and what makes them inclined to engage, inclined to buy.
Yeah.
And anything that helps me do that better is going to be amazing. And I also don't think anything's going to replace me in my skill for doing that. So
No,
I'm
and it
just
won't.
excited for more tools to be better at what I already do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
awesome. Well, thank you for joining the show. Really interesting stuff. And we will definitely post a link and a way for people to get in touch with you. Good luck. And maybe we'll check in a year and see how it's going.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you.